Okay, parents, students, grandparents, anybody that's helping with lesson 20 in module 4 tonight. This is a tricky topic, converting things from yards to feet or pints to quarts or quarts to pints, and dealing with mixed numbers and multiplication all at the same time. So I know that the homework is a lot today, and I just want to help kind of guide some of it. So I want to look at this first example in 1A. It says here, I've whited out the section so we can look at it step by step. So if we're taking 2 2/3 yards and we're wanting to convert it to feet, we get 8 feet, but I want to talk about the process to get there. So starting off with 2 2/3 yards, the first thing we do is separate out the unit from the number. And so we do that by converting it to 2 2/3 times 1 yard. That just separates out the unit. Then what we're going to do is keep the 2 2/3 the same, but change 1 yard into 3 feet. And we know this because 1 yard equals 3 feet, of course. What can be confusing and tricky is when it goes the other direction, or which direction to go in. So for instance, if we're going from yards to feet, we're going to multiply by 3. Okay, so that seems pretty straightforward. However, if we were going from feet to yards, 1 foot equals 1/3 of a yard, and so we'd be multiplying by 1/3. This is also the same as dividing by 3. But back to our original problem. The next part that can be a little bit tricky is taking our mixed number, 2 2/3, and coming up with the 8/3. And when we were young, we learned this trick, and we're not necessarily teaching the trick to the kids right now. What we're doing is trying to break it down to them visually in a way that is a little bit more concrete. So if we're dealing with thirds, we know that 1 equals 3/3. 2 would equal 6/3. And if we had 2/3 to add to that 6/3, we would end up with 8/3. So 2 2/3 is equal to 8/3. So going back to our problem, we have 8/3 times 3 feet. And that equals 24/3 of a foot. We've talked about how 24/3 is the same as 24 divided by 3, which would bring us to 8 feet. Okay, so for B, letter B, they've done almost all of those steps for you. The only thing they haven't done is the 5/4 times 1/3 of a yard. So if we do 5 times 1 at the top, we have 5. And if we do 4 times 3 at the bottom, that would be 12ths. So we have 5/12ths of a yard for B. The tricky part to this problem would have probably been going from feet to yards. And so again, what I've told the kids is just think about what you would do with 1. So if I had 1 foot, I know that 1 foot is the same as 1/3 of a yard. So I would be multiplying times 1/3 to get from any number of feet to the yards. So let's now take a look at converting 3 5/6 of a foot to inches. Since we are going from feet to inches, the first thing I want to do is think about what do I have to do to get from 1 foot to inches. If I was just going from 1 foot to figure out how many inches was in 1 foot, I would multiply by 12. So right away, I know that I'm going to take my 3 5/6 and I'm going to multiply it by 12. Once I realize that's my problem, then I know that the next step is to take my 3 5/6 and turn it into an improper fraction. So first think about how many 6 would 3 be? 3 wholes. And 3 wholes would be 18/6. 18/6 plus 5/6 would be 23/6. Okay, each one of these I'm still multiplying by 12. That's the rest of my problem. I like to rewrite 12 as 12/1 when I'm getting to the multiplying phase, because it's just easier for me to look at it that way. 12/1 is the same thing as 12. That's 12 wholes or 12 ones. And then I'm going to look at how I can simplify before I multiply. So simplifying before I multiply means that I'm looking at the numbers on top and the numbers on bottom and seeing what kind of relationships there are. I see a relationship between 6 and 12. Both of those are divisible by 6. So I'm going to divide them by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 12 divided by 6 is 2. So I now have 23 times 2, which is 46, and 1 times 1 is 1. So that equals 46, and 3 and 5/6 feet is 46 inches. Okay, this next one can be tricky if you're not super familiar with pints and quarts. So while I'm not going to solve D for you, I am going to give you the conversion factor. If I'm thinking about pints and quarts, I know that pints, there are 2 cups in a pint, and there are 4 cups in a quart. So if I puzzle that all together, I know that to get from pints to quarts, I have to multiply times 1/2, okay? Because a pint is half of a quart. This visual may provide some help, just as we think about how many cups in a pint, how many pints in a quart, how many quarts in a gallon. These are not measurements that all of us use every day, so it can get tricky a little bit. So if I'm looking at these, I can think of some different conversion factors that might be helpful. For example, if I were going from cups to pints, I know that 1 cup equals half of a pint. So I would multiply to get from cups to pints by 1/2. However, if I was going from pints to cups, I know that 1 pint equals 2 cups. So I would be multiplying times 2 to get from pints to cups. So it's really good to be familiar with the different units of measurement to help you know which direction you're going, if you're multiplying by a whole number or multiplying by a fraction.